Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, where we explore the future and what this means for your leadership. We ask the big questions. What's happening on the horizon? What does this mean for us? And most importantly, what skills do I need now for leadership of the future? It's time to explore. Let's go.
Hello there. This is Zoe Routh, your friendly neighborhood Canadian-Australian leadership futurist. I love to work with leaders and teams on looking at what's on the horizon and asking the big questions of what does this mean for our team, our business, and our leadership. My guest today has some amazing answers to what's on the horizon and what leaders should do about it. His name is Anthony Coppedge. He is a business transformation leader. He has done an enormous amount of work with organizations like IBM from a sales and marketing point of view and looking at the integration of technologies and really helping teams align to their core objectives. So we talk about the ins and outs of agile, the ins and outs of OKRs, which are objectives and key results, and how leaders can help their team members get more autonomy and more responsibility to better deliver on the outcomes, the impact that we're all after in our businesses. So we take a detailed look at methodology, and then we zoom out and look at the future and what's happening there and what leaders can do to embrace the future, the principles, the attitudes, and the skills that are required in this rate of change that we're all confronting. So it is a lovely, deep, rich, wonderful conversation. I think you will enjoy it. Let's get into it. Well, welcome to the show all the way from Fort Worth, Texas, Anthony Coppedge.
Howdy. You kind of expected that, didn't you? I mean, I kind of had to say howdy at that point.
Yeah, we're missing the big hat, though, so...
Sorry.
That's okay. Well, nobody can see it anyway, so we can just imagine you with a big Texas hat.
And the horse and the cowboy boots and the spurs, sure.
And that all happens, right? Like, don't destroy our imagination for that happens in Texas.
If you come to downtown Fort Worth 3 times a week, they actually do a cattle drive where they take herds of cattle and cowboys on horses will actually herd them through Throckmorton Street down, which is one of the main streets down Fort Worth, from the stockyards through to the railway where they have a huge number of rail cars. So the cattle are processed through there. So they literally will have, we call it Cowtown. Fort Worth's nickname is Cowtown. You will see the cows being herded right down the middle of the street. Traffic is blocked. And that happens at least a couple of times a week.
That's awesome. It's like driving in country Australia where you have sheep crossing the road or cattle hanging around. That's terrific. Thank you so much. So let's dive into the richness because I know you have such a great depth of experience working in business and you are an agile and OKR specialist, and we're going to dive into what that actually means in just a moment. How did you get into the field where you're traveling the world, working with big organizations and helping them transform their cultures from a digital platform using OKRs? Like, that's quite a complex situation. How did you land into that field?
I was not smart enough to figure it out. It all happened, right? It's one of those lifetime journeys where the end result is greater than any of the sum of the parts. Like, it's so fascinating to me because I just started with sales. And in the early 2000s into marketing and learning about early adoption of digital marketing in the late 90s, early 2000s. Then it was in 2009 that I learned about business agility. And that happened at a software as a service company, the very first software as a service company I worked for. And I was fascinated, just learned so much, just a sponge. I remember walking around, I was the 99th employee, and we had this entire floor of this building. And I went over to the software development area, and they had this 60-foot wall, 10-foot tall, white magnetized whiteboard. And they had all these index cards on it. And it was so organized and so cool. And I was like, what is that? He said, it's a scrum wall. And I'm like, rugby? He said, no. It's like agile. And so I had no idea about any of that. But what I found was their work was extremely well disciplined. Like, they really cranked out good volume with quality at scale. Like, this was amazing to watch. And because of my role in marketing, we were looking at what was coming down the pipe that we needed to tell our current clients about. So existing customers, but then also what would we promote to prospects? So being a part of their stand-ups or going to their showcases and hearing about what was coming was very helpful, but it also exposed me to a way of working I'd never seen. And so I wanted to apply it in marketing. And so did, and learned a ton of what not to do, right? Because unlike software development, which is very head down focused, and unless there's a break fix kind of situation, you just sit down and write code or develop. Like that was the focus. Our world was responsive to sales, reactive to the market. And it always felt like marketing was hair on fire. Sales always felt a little bit like hair on fire. And I wanted that to not be the case. I was like, I like the way they're working. Why can't we work this way? And it turns out you can, but you can't do it exactly the same way because the realities aren't the same. And so this was the beginning of that understanding in the mid 2000s. And then since then, it was like coming home. I now realize there's such a better way of working that is so outcome oriented and not output oriented, that is so about delivering value for the customer instead of dollars for the business. The business makes the dollars, but only if and when you consistently deliver value to customers. So why would you not make that the priority, right? And yet it seems such a basic thing. And yet what do most people focus on? What's our revenue? What's our number? Look, you need money. I get it. But I need oxygen. At no point during the day do I stop and go, boy, that's some good oxygen. I need some more of that. I just don't do that because oxygen is going to happen. It's going to be there. Now, it's not a perfect metaphor, but the principle of it is I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to do something that yields that. In other words, it's like a scoreboard in a game. Like right now, the World Cup's on. I know I'm going to date the program by doing this, but the World Cup for soccer or football, as the rest of the world knows it, is on. And the coaches aren't watching the scores. They're watching the field. Why? Because that's how you change the score. You don't watch the scoreboard by watching the score. The score doesn't change by watching the scoreboard. You have to tactically and strategically make decisions that can affect that. So why do we focus on the revenue number? It's a really good question that most businesses don't have a great answer for.
Yeah, well, I think it's the slapdash approach to developing results and measures, I think, is a contributing factor to that. And we'll unpack that in just a moment. I want to just tease out a couple of things that you said so that our listeners can keep up with our discussion. Agile methodology. I think some people are familiar with how that applies to technology, as you've mentioned. How did you adopt it to the marketing and sales arena? And is it a transferable working methodology to other organizations, or does it specifically fit in tech companies?
The answer is yes to everybody. What I would say, though, is that what are called frameworks. So if you use the term Scrum or Kanban, or you hear about SAFe, or name it, right? There's a lot of applications of ways that people do work. They organize and orchestrate their work that they call Agile. So Agile would be the umbrella concept, right? And it's really based off of values and principles. And the values and principles are transferable everywhere. So individuals and interactions needs to be the focus, not just for software, but everywhere. If you entrust and empower your people by not only delegating responsibility, but if you delegate the authority that goes with it, it's amazing what they can accomplish. But then the job of the manager changes from telling people what to do and inspecting to make sure it's done to supporting people and asking them what they need you to do. And how do you get things out of their way? So it's an inverse setup. And that flattens the organization. So agility gives us the ability to be responsive, to be iterative, and to understand how to be customer centric, and to do that consistently, frequently at scale. So you started just with one team, but then it's applicable everywhere. So it's the idea of how do we do that and repeat that process and become highly experimental and have small experiments with small, low risk frequently rather than huge risks and wait a quarter or a year to find out if it worked. We want to chunk that up into smaller bits. And that's really the heart of Agile. So that applies everywhere. So what I've found is that if you'll apply the values and principles, you can be Agile, but you should never try to do Agile, because then you wouldn't be Agile. It would just be another method of doing another thing. And that's never the point.
So thank you. And one of the things that I think leaders need to digest from what you talked about is, as you described it, the flip of authority and leadership. And essential to that is, I'm thinking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or explain a little bit further, objectives and key results is a way to help delegate that responsibility and authority and set the leader up as a servant to their people so they can be on a mission to deliver those OKRs. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is so well said, Zoe. I almost don't use the term OKR. I almost don't use the term agile very often because people think they know what those mean often. And what I say is, what if you don't? So what if it's not what you think it is? So I would say agile is not this thing that software teams did and that others copy. Agile is a way of believing that we're better together than apart. And we're better when we trust those closest to the problem to come up with the best solutions. And we're better when we empower them to actually tell us what they need us to do so that we do things in service of the customer, right? So there's agility. And then OKRs are clarity with alignment. So what does that mean? So it was invented by a guy named Andy Grove at Intel, CEO of Intel. And then John Doerr wrote a really great book called Measure What Matters. Highly recommend it. And in it, it really talks about the principles here. And that's why I like principles. You know, they just transcend so much. And the concept is an objectives. And the way I describe it would be anything that creates and delivers value for the benefit of the client, whoever the client is. So what if that's your end user? What if that's a business partner? What if that's an internal team? I don't care who the client is, but are you serving that client in service of delivering value? So that's an objective, and they should be aspirational and inspirational. So they're really big ideas, kind of like, when President Kennedy in the 60s, this is an example I use when he said, we're going to go to the moon. We're going to put a human on the moon by the end of the decade. Well, that was the vision. The mission was actually to increase education, to have a better understanding of the universe, to advance technology. And that vision and mission, I would call a guiding star or a North Star. Well, that tells us what we're about and why we're going to do it. But how you organize that are these aspirational things. You know what would be really great is if we created this organization that helped us understand what it would take to get us into space, to the moon, and then back again. Well, we'll call that NASA, right? So it's like you have this whole big, great, massive thing. And then you got that's going to take some things. Those are key results, measurable things that would help us get to this. Well, we'd have to have a rocket that can not only get us there, but be able to get us there with the extra weight load of stuff that's going to have to stay behind. And then, oh, by the way, you got to figure out how to keep them alive and scrub the oxygen while they're there in space. Oh, and then you got to figure out how to get them back off of a surface and then all the way back to Earth. So you would see the measurable things they would do to make that happen at a very high level. In business, this might be as simple as saying, we want to achieve this growth in this market segment. What would we need to do? Well, marketing's going to need to work with sales. Sales is going to have to provide real-time feedback back to marketing so we can pivot and change and work together. The brand or the product owner is going to have to help us understand where that product's going and how we're going to address these needs and what's the differentiator in the market. And so there's all these things we would measure. So the OKRs are shared objectives and discrete key results. So I could have different teams contributing different portions of it, or different people on a team contributing different portions towards a larger thing. But the alignment that we have is so much better than saying dedicated team. Now I have true cross-functional teams. And I have teaming happening, which is the ad hoc creation of, we need to solve for this. People choose themselves without a manager intervening, solve it, and then disband when they're done. Right. So there's this autonomy to really work towards, if we know with clarity what we're aiming for, and we have the alignment to know what it's going to take to get there, I know who to talk to and I know how to get that done. And we have a system that's communication, coordination, and collaboration to deliver outcomes, not just outputs. And that's really the heartbeat of OKRs. So any business wants what I just described would probably benefit from OKRs if they're willing to take and delegate their authority, not just the responsibility, if they're willing to become servant leaders, and if they're willing to put the customer first. If not, don't bother.
Yeah. So, oh God, that's a wonderful list of ifs and commitments that leaders need to embrace if they're going to be this flexible. And I think there's a couple other premises in here too that are useful for leaders when they're listening to this, is that shared objectives and seeing how each team fits in part of the whole is systems thinking. And a lot of leaders and people are not used to doing that kind of work. And that's why we have problems in silos. and where people just come to work and they just put their head down and focus on their little part. They don't see how the whole thing fits together and how their work flows into their colleagues' work or conflicts with their colleagues' work, and that affects the whole ecosystem. So I think from a leadership development point of view, that's a really important part of the puzzle. And one thing I get my leaders to do is to draw out, make it visual, how all these things connect. Is that something that you do with your teams as well?
Absolutely. We actually use some software for this. We use a tool called Workboard, workboard.com, and it visualizes exactly what you just described. So we have not only are we making progress, but we understand what people feel about that progress. So there's a confidence rating. So let's say I've got something that by the end of the quarter, it needs to be at 100%. We said we'd like to get to 100%. And after 2 months, we're at 20%. Well, mathematically, we shouldn't be able to make it. But I might have a green arrow on that would show my confidence rating is high because I know something that the numbers can't know. The numbers can't show. We did a lot of front end work. We had a known limitation with working with this other department, but their freed resources start in that last month. And they have 100% dedication for us. We're confident we're going to do 80% of the work in that last month because we just couldn't get their resources sooner. It's not that we weren't doing our job. We've known all along that was going to be a constraint. We've planned for it and we have high confidence. So whereas it would be a red 20%, right next to the red 20% is a green arrow with a little hover. You could go, hey, we feel actually really good about this. We planned for this because numbers are never enough. And yet, most dashboards are limited by the numbers. And what we want to say is we validate the numbers with anecdotal insight, right? Because I can make a spreadsheet say anything. I can make a graph say anything. What I want to know is the truth. I don't actually care if it's red or yellow or green. I don't care if it's 20% or 100%. What I care is it's true. Because if it's not true, I can't trust it and I can't make meaningful decisions on it. But if it is, I can do that. And I can do that frequently along the way to know how to support my teams and give them what they need.
Hey, it's Zoe. If you're enjoying these leadership insights, join us in the Amplifiers Academy. It's bite-sized leadership development through self-paced videos and exercises, templates, checklists, resources, and an online community to connect with other leaders. It's Amplifiers Academy, your gateway to better, stronger leadership. See you there. So a lot of that is understanding context. So like you said, it's one thing to look at the number going, ooh, 20% completion, that looks terrible. And the truth is an aspect of understanding the full context of that. What does that mean? How are we addressing that? One of the things I also want to clarify before we move forward is, and you said it a couple of times, and I think it's important to clarify for people, the difference between an outcome and an output. Can you, in your words, share what that means?
An output is a deliverable. So if I need to do 4 things for something to be true, I actually do want to measure if I'm delivering those outputs or not. Nothing wrong with that. But if I do 4 things and I don't actually achieve something valuable, was it worth doing the 4 things? Let me give you a really simple and true example. This actually happened. In sales, I had a seller come to me because I was teaching them the principles of agile sales, of agility with sales, OKRs and all this, everything we're talking about, Zoe. And the seller was learning about prioritization. And so this seller came to me and said, check it out. I made 200 calls this week. And the week before that, I made 200 calls. And I said, great. How many leads did you get? Well, none, but I made 400 calls. And I said, the funny thing is we don't actually pay you to make calls. We pay you to deliver leads. Should you make calls to get leads? Yeah, probably. Is the point the call? No. And this was a learning opportunity because they mistook activity for outcome, output for outcome. Actually, if you make 1 million calls and get no leads, that's actually not a successful thing, right? So what we want to do is say, what if you made 50 calls, nothing was working, and you started evaluating why are you not getting the calls? Are you calling the right time of day? Do you have the right number? Should you shift to email or LinkedIn Navigator or any number of other tools, channels, and say, I'm going to experiment and chunk the work up into smaller bits so I don't commit all my time only to discover that's not working. I'm going to try to find what is the balance to strike between enough and not enough effort to see what results I can get and learn faster. Because if I learn faster, I'll probably perform better. But if I don't learn faster, my likelihood of performing is like luck. I may or may not perform, and I couldn't tell you why. So what we want to do is reduce that risk by saying, let's chunk it up into smaller bits, and let's not measure the activity to say that was success. Let's measure the activities in smaller bits to understand, is that yielding the desired outcome, which, by the way, has to be set way before they ever start the work, which is why we set those North Stars. It's why we set the objectives, because if you know clearly what you're measured on and what is expected, then any effort you put in should be obvious. Is it moving that needle or not? And if it's not, can we talk about that? Because why would we spend time on something that isn't working? And we don't want to, so we don't assume that we're right as leaders when we set a target. We assume we have an idea, maybe some historical context, but we assume the market will tell us something. We assume our prospects and customers will tell us something. We assume our sellers will tell us something. Our marketers will tell us something. And we listen because we want to learn, not assume we've got it figured out.
Mm-hmm. I think it touches on one of the big mistakes I see a lot of organizations and leaders make, is just when they do their KPIs, it's a list of activities, as you say, deliverables, and they don't necessarily ask the question, is this having the impact, i.e. the outcomes that we want? And I think in terms of what we're tracking, we need to track the outcome, track the impact, and as you say, be a diagnostic and measure our activities upstream. Are they leading to the outcomes as well? So we're kind of doing a little bit of both. It's lead and lag measures. Is that the kind of terminology you use as well?
Yeah, we would say that. I like my friend Deidre Packnad says that taillights and headlights, and I really like that language, because the thing about taillights is there is something to learn about that if you're behind them, right? If there's a bunch of cars in front of you slamming on their taillights, you probably ought to slow down, right? So they can be a leading indicator when you have enough lagging indicators, right? Because it can tell you potentially a trend. Same thing's true in a dashboard. So if I see a trend pattern in a rolling 9-day average spark line going down, I could probably assume it's going to keep going down unless something changes, right? So there's value in looking at the lagging, but the leading comes from the insight gained from anecdotal insight. This is where you go get feedback. You ask questions. You look at anecdotal data. You listen to what people say. One of the things I created is a thing called the retrospective radar, where we have teams not only tell us what worked, what didn't, what added value, what didn't, but what they'd like to change. But then they're able to give a 3-sentence bit of feedback that says, what is the ask? Why is this important? And what do you need from that? And so when we do that, those 3 sentences then go into a kind of a radar, which looks like a center sphere, which is the work that they're going to self-prioritize, then what their manager can help with, and then in the outer ring, what their leaders, senior leaders can help with. And so it's divided into 5 segments like a pizza. So now you have circle of influence, control, influence, and concern. Control is what the person's going to do. Influence is what the manager. Concern is what senior leaders would touch. And then we have the 5 segments of start doing, stop doing, keep doing, do more of, or do less of. And so now I can say, oh, this feedback was do more of for the manager. This feedback was stop doing for our senior leaders. So now you contextualize feedback, and we would take that feedback. I had 26 teams, about 600 sellers, and I was able to take all that verbatim data, export it, and then take it over to Watson Natural Language Processing and say, hey, Watson, tell me the top sentiment, tone, frequency, keyword, emotion that we're hearing. And we're able to use data analysis to look at multiple different types of text data to say the patterns are such and such. And now it wasn't a complaint. It was an observation, and it was a data-backed observation that gave us at scale the ability to take not just a person or a team's feedback, but the organization's feedback. And it was a very powerful way to represent that and understand why we were making the asks and why that was important. And then you could do an impact assessment and tie the two together.
That's a lovely insight into using artificial intelligence for business insight. And of course, working at IBM, you have access to Watson.
Well, I use the free version online. I was to tell you, I went right to the Watson online on a browser, and I did it there because I didn't need to do more than that. So what I did, anybody could do.
I didn't even realize it was available free online. That's amazing. Okay, so I want to move to looking. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights around these principles and beliefs and methodologies. What in your role, I mean, you're sitting in the tech space. What are some emerging tech trends that are affecting leadership and business coming up?
Well, I laugh because I continue to see stuff that it surprises me I'm still seeing. For example, the pandemic obviously accelerated digital technology adoption and focus. I think we're going to continue to see a push of sales with marketing through shared data platforms. So as before, you always had your CRM for sales and you had your CDP for marketing or whatever, customer data platform. You have to make it all tie together now. So we call that a stack, a tech stack. And I think what's important is you will continue to see what the pandemic taught us to be true. That is, it's more affordable with the technology now for even midsize and SMBs, not just enterprises, to use tools like Salesforce's marketing CDP, Adobe Experience CDP, niche firms like Telium and BlueVenn. I would say that the emerging trend would probably be the single pane of glass view that everybody's always wanted and tried to get through multiple reports. But actually, I think a customer data platform will be a central piece of a tech stack, whereas it's been a nice to have. Now it's a central necessary piece, because with what are called APIs, the ability for tools to talk to each other in computer language backdoor, that's how you share the data. And so you can tie in and then field map and whatever you need to do. In other words, I don't have 4 systems, I have a system. Even if I have 4 systems, I have a system. And so this begins to create not only a single pane of glass, but a single point of truth, so that I now know how it all ties together. I think that's going to be a big trend we'll see, because the price has really dropped and there's a lot more in the market. I think last time I checked, there was like 20 in the market, 20 vendors. So there's a lot more competition in that space, which just drives the price down, of course. So I think we'll see CDPs as a huge trend for all businesses, especially B2B or sophisticated B2C.
So customer data platforms? Mm-hmm. Is that similar to a CRM, customer relationship management tool?
It ties into a CRM. So whereas a CRM would be your customer relations management, that's what you know about someone. That's how you know when you have interactions, when sales talk to them and marketing talks, whatever. You have a way to capture all of those touch points. Then there's content marketing automation, which says every time they come to our website or use our app or whatever, we know who they are. We learn a bit more about them. We understand their trends over time, when we're likely to say, based on machine learning, hey, you liked that. We think you'll also like this. And that's all done through automation. So now if you take what we know about them digitally and what we know about them interactionally or relationally and combine that, and then you represent that and you start slicing and dicing the patterns and trends across many, many, many people and many, many different segments, now you start to get aggregated meta trends. And that's what a CDP lets you do.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much. And this understanding and processing of data is definitely a trend that businesses need to be across in understanding their interface with their people. And I think that's useful for small to medium enterprises, as well as the larger, bigger corporations that are working around the globe. Okay. So when we're thinking about the future of business, and we've been mired in the future coming rapidly into our faces over the last couple of years, what do you think is going to be important for business to contend with? And what's going to be the same and what's going to be different?
The same and different. I think the same will be those who hate change today are going to find that irrelevance is a far worse option. I mean, if you hate change, you're going to really hate irrelevance, because the rate of change is greater than any one person can keep up with. So if you don't have a focus on not only reacting to change, but responding to change. In other words, building yourself much more like a sailboat where you take advantage of the wind no matter which way it's blowing, because you can sail into the wind. It is possible, right? So what you want to do is understand, okay, we have to be able to respond, which means you have to be in a position that systems, tools, process, and culture. Because if you don't change your systems, tools, process, and culture, you'll never be responsive. So you're talking about a wholesale change, a transformation that's going to be required. So I think the same as those who hate change are going to really don't like irrelevance. But then the difference is actual transformations then will be overtly not about optimizing existing ways of working. You don't optimize a caterpillar to get a butterfly. You don't optimize a tadpole to get a frog. It transforms. So we have to transform from one state to a whole new state, by the way, that's intentionally unrecognizable from the previous state. So if what you look and act like today is what you look like and act like tomorrow, that's not transformation. You might optimize, but the world's changing so fast that optimization is a losing race to the bottom. You can't possibly keep up your optimization as fast as there's change. So to respond, to ride the wave rather than try to, dive through the wave is going to be the key. And I think the way to do that is to transform in such a way that lets you take advantage of that.
So if the caterpillar envisioning a butterfly, very difficult for a caterpillar to envision a butterfly. Working on that metaphor then, so leaders in visualizing, if we're going to contend with what's coming in the future, how do they start to imagine a different way of being a...
Start with the DNA. The caterpillar's DNA and the butterfly's DNA are the same. Why? It's the same organism. The DNA merely has a very different expression in the new organism, right? So the expression of the butterfly is different from the expression of the caterpillar, yet exact same DNA. So that which made you you, that which made your company distinctive and original and unique, that DNA, those things that are true to you, that are beneficial to those around you within and without, that's what's got to remain the same. So you start there and you say at our core, we value, we believe these things. What would be a way that would let us respond to a market, not just react to a market? What would be a way that we could change our business to move with the headwinds, to take the waves from 3 different directions at once? What kind of changes in a business would that require? And usually the people doing the work in your business probably know a lot of those answers, because it's not your job as the leader to know those answers. It's your job to ask better questions. So now you go ask the people who are doing it, in order to be responsive, to go from X to Y, where X is one state and Y is a new state, not optimize, not improve X. What would you imagine that would look like? And then you give them time and space to figure that out. You give them permission to experiment and come back with hypotheses. See, that's agility, because now I have the ability to test hypotheses in a punishment-free environment where risk is rewarded in small chunks. And now I have the ability to learn and iterate faster. And when I do that, I learn not only what works, I learn what doesn't work, which is just as valuable, right? Because on the surface, most people have an area, especially your legacy, you have areas where you suck today, right? Let's just be honest. It's actually winning to suck a little less next month, and then suck a little less the month after that and the quarter after that, because eventually you want to get to where you don't suck at all. But gosh, if you could just stop sucking as much, that would be winning. So how do you stop the pain? How do you stop the stupid? And really free people up to call it what it is, adjust for that, and then say, and what would be awesome is this other thing. What would it take to get there? Sometimes you have to sever ties with the way you were to become who you need to be. Matter of fact, I would say oftentimes you do. And what you got to do is that's not bad people necessarily. It's probably bad process. It's probably not bad technology. It's probably too much technology. You haven't streamlined. You haven't really gone back and said, do we still need to do this, or what? Well, it's too painful. See, if we take those 3 systems offline, we would have to have something built while we're running those. That's twice as expensive. Well, yes, it's twice as expensive while you're doing it. But then not only is it a cost savings when you can turn those 3 old things off and you have the new thing in place, but your way of working gets better. So now people aren't doing dumb processes, dumb systems, manual effort, exporting to Excel, import back to this, all that suddenly goes away. So there's an opportunity cost and a morale cost, because you're going to have people happier and more satisfied when they have to do less stupid work. So, transformation is what reveals that you don't need to optimize. You actually need to do something very different. And you've got to let people call that what it is and embrace it and smile and laugh and go, yeah, we got to change that. You're right. And then empower them to do it. That's real leadership.
Stop doing stupid work.
It sounds stupid. It sounds so silly, but it's so powerfully true. Ask your teams, are we doing any stupid work today? Just ask the question.
I'm definitely going to ask my team that. Are we doing any stupid work?
And I guarantee most teams will say yes, if it's psychologically safe to do so.
So let's talk meta context. So in Western world, we are immersed in a capitalist economic environment. Do you think capitalism needs to change? If so, how?
I think the idea of free markets is great, personally. I think the trick is that managing attention. I don't think you can solve the problem of capitalism versus any other system. That's not a problem to solve. It's attention to manage. So if you have no oversight and run amok and people do whatever, they take advantage. Because there will always be people that take advantage. And if you put too much oversight, you stifle creativity and you limit innovation because the risk isn't worth it. And those who already have the biggest chunk of the pie just hold on to it. Right. So there is a need for competition to thrive. And to do that, you've got to have boundaries with a lot of room in the middle. You got to give room for people to experiment and expand. I mean, this is where innovation comes from. The easy example for all of us is smartphones. When BlackBerry was at the top of their game, Apple introduced a thing called an iPhone. But what they didn't do was introduce a competitor. They introduced a game changer. They introduced an ecosystem in a small form factor. Right. This is what you couldn't imagine, BlackBerry. And they didn't do it. And actually, it was 2007. In 2009, 2 years later, BlackBerry was still way ahead of Apple in sales. 2 years. People don't tend to want to remember that. But now you look at it, like Apple's easily the dominant leader there. And where's BlackBerry at all? So it's so interesting to realize that innovation happens when someone has a contrarian idea. Right. They didn't agree with the status quo. They questioned it. You can't do that without psychological safety. You can't experiment inside a controlled environment and get anything out of that controlled environment that was not in it before, right? You're going to have to introduce some level of risk. You're going to have something that says it's okay to try things we've never, it's okay to fail as long as we're learning. Because if you mitigate the risk and you learn quickly and you fail fast, you succeed sooner. So we want that, but that's a cultural norm that's rewarded if it's going to be sustained. If it's not rewarded, it probably never will be. And you'll just optimize even the things that don't work. You'll optimize those because it's all you can do. So I think, does capitalism need to change? Yeah, probably. I think our understanding of how to be responsible with any kind of wealth or any kind of privilege is important, but you can't really mandate that. Because the moment you do, it's like saying, the moment I tell you how to be agile, that's specifically this way of being agile. It's no longer agile. That's anti-agile. So it's hard to say that I can control that. It's more than I can understand it and I can put some guardrails in place. But I have to just be willing to take some of those risks as I go.
Thank you for sharing that wonderful, insightful answer. And I love the paradox of we need psychological safety in order to take risks. I think it's a powerful insight. And also that it's not a problem to solve. It's a tension to manage. So it is a polarity, freedom versus control, which is capitalism.
A continuum.
Yeah. We can't just let it go unfettered because there's been some exploitive aspects to capitalism that we need to rein in and balance. So when we're thinking about leadership then, leadership into the future, what do you think needs to change, if anything?
This is going to be very controversial, I believe, because when I talk about it, it's almost always received with a fair amount of skepticism.
Oh, bring it on.
But I think leadership needs to change to care more about who people are than what they do. Now, think about that. That says I'm more interested in the humanity than the performance. So when you hear stories, like I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I hear stories of people who've had devastating things happen, and they've had bosses and employers who said, you know what? You're so awesome. We so appreciate that. This is so hard for you. Take some time. And if they go way past their vacation time or whatever, they're like, just do it. We're going to take care of it. The team steps up, people step up. And it's not about, did they count the number of hours this person was gone? They gave the person the support they needed during an incredibly challenging time. And this person talks about, boy, I'd have been, dedicated to my team before. I'll take a bullet for them now. Like, this is a team that's really believed in me. That is putting the person before the performance. Now, it's an extreme example, but think about it on a more mundane level. If I empower you, Zoe, in your team to actually think about what you should stop doing, how much leadership cachet do I get over time when I continually ask you, so what have y'all stopped doing? Because that is the opposite of what most people, most managers and leaders are asking. They're like, so what are you working on? What did you do? What are you doing next? They're always looking for the maximizing of productivity. I'm looking for the maximization of energy. Where are you jazzed? What's awesome? What could be amazing? What's not awesome? What are you stopping doing? What good work did you stop doing so that you could focus on some great work? I really want to know that. I'm more interested in your well-being and your team's well-being than I am in the performance. It's not manipulative because I genuinely am, as a leader, I want to be interested in that. But I also know they're going to perform way better than if I sit around and told them what to do and how much to do it and where they're doing it and inspecting them, right? Because that trust is missing. So the more trust I give them, the more trust they give me. And leadership is at its core is a trust-based relationship, right? A leader inspires people. That's so intangible, yet incredibly valuable. So the trust is also intangible, yet shows up in multiple tangible ways. So I want leaders to really be more interested in who people are than what they do.
Wow. I think that's such an important message. And I'm thinking about different organizations I've been listening to, and their approach. Here's an example is, hey, if you guys want to earn an extra 10K and you can, start billing X amount more hours, you might actually consider taking where you could do a couple more hours each day and maybe a few hours on the weekend to get this done. And we'll pay you an extra 10 grand this quarter. And I'm like, I wanted to poke myself in the eye or poke them in the eye with that, going, what are you doing? What are you doing to people? Like it's going against so many different principles. What is the kind of culture you're creating? What's the message you're giving about you're a useful outputter and drive yourself into the ground in order to get an output? And there's lose sight of so many different values, principles, and ethics around that. So I love your insight of I'm more interested in the people than what they're doing. And it's the outcomes that are worthwhile with that. So the actual humans will front up and be more interested in business if they know that they're cared for.
Well, yeah. Not only do you get better productivity overall, where productivity is defined by valuable outcomes, not more work, by the way. I think that's one thing. The other is you have much less churn. And this is assuming a number of things like you don't have a toxic culture around you or that you're not paying market rate or better. I want to pay people as much as possible because I don't want that to be a motivating factor at all. So let's just take care of that. Let's take care of that. Let's get it done. Now let's focus on the stuff that really matters, right? Because if you're thinking about that, I'm at risk. What I want you to just not even have to think about that. You're taken care of. We're going to take care of you financially. Now let's talk about how else we can take care of you. Because I want someone to understand that, and I talk about this overtly, Zoe, I don't have a span of control. I choose to have a span of care. So my span of care is what's in it for them, not what's in it for me. So when I have a one-on-one, I always lead my one-on-ones. You can ask anybody who's worked for me. I do it exactly the same way. As I would say, hey, Zoe, some things you need to know about our one-on-ones before we set them up. One, I'm always going to send you an agenda beforehand of anything I want to talk about. You're going to know about that at least a day or more ahead of time. You'll never be surprised at the meeting with an agenda update from me. You're always going to know that because this meeting isn't for me. It's for you. So what I want you to do is come and tell me what I can do to help you. So our meetings will go like this, Zoe. I'm going to say, hey, Zoe, as you know from the agenda, these are a couple of things I'd like to talk about. And I put my hands in front of me like this. And I say, so that's what I want to bring. But my first question, and I kind of take my hands metaphorically and move them to the side. And I say but first, how is Zoe? How are you doing? How's the family? What's going on? And I just want to know how you are as a human, as a person. And the amount you want to share and the level to which you want to give me insight into your personal life, up to you. You could just talk work stuff. But what I want you to know is I'm more interested in you than the thing that we're going to talk about. And I want that to be so overt that I put it first. And then I lead with, you know what I'd like to talk about, but now, Zoe, what's on your mind today? And if we get to my stuff, great. And if not, we can probably slack about it later. Right? Because I'm more interested in listening to you and letting you be heard, seen, and valued than in understanding what you're working on.
That's lovely.
That is a difference maker, I think, as a leader.
How can we clone you? I think we need this sort of attitude. It makes me feel all warm just knowing that I would have a leader like you, just wanting to know that as a primary thing.
But why is that rare? Why is that not normal, Zoe? Why is that not the standard? There's nothing I'm doing that's particularly challenging or special about that. I'm just doing it. So how many of the listeners do you feel like, as you're listening right now, if I'm speaking to someone, it's like, I could be like that. Yes, you can. So just do it. This is a choice you make. I always know I can only influence above me. I have a span of care below me, but I can only influence above me. I can't control it. So as far as for me and the teams that I have span of care over, we're going to be this way. I can't do much about stuff above me. I can try, but I guarantee I'm going to be air cover for those people. I guarantee they can trust that they're not going to get hit from above. I'm going to take the hit for them because that's what I signed up for as a leader.
Beautiful.
Anybody can do that.
Anybody can. And it takes a little bit of courage and a little bit of focus to do it. In sort of my last closing question, any other top tips for leaders in terms of facing the future right now?
Your people are humans first with lives outside of work. Know your people. Understand their dreams and aspirations. Figure out what's happening that's within the boundaries of what they want to share, always at their control, right? Boundaries are for them to set. But understand your people. Try to understand what their motivations are. Ask if you do or don't have the culture that they love or like. Ask what it would take. I mean, the most important thing you can do is ask better questions. If you focus on asking better questions, you will become, by necessity, an active, phenomenal listener. And when you listen to that, then you come back and say, now I've heard you. What I heard you say was, you repeat it back to make sure you got the context right. Then you go, and here's what I can commit to. And now I take my action step out of what I'll do. I'll either go talk to someone about that. I'll see what I can do. I'll go change it myself, or I'll empower you to change it right now. Right? There's always a step I can take. There are 5 answers to everything in life. Yes, no, maybe, sometimes, and I don't know. And that's all you need to know as a leader. You have 5 possible answers. But you have millions and unlimited questions you can ask. So don't worry about having the right answer. You only have 5 anyways. So you really should focus on the questions. And to do that, you need to understand not just your business, you need to understand your people. And everybody can do that.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Anthony. Where can people know more about you and follow your work?
So LinkedIn is easy. My anthonycoppedge.com website. Email me. It's just, I'm easy to find online. And there's just the me, myself, and I. So come find Anthony Coppedge, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll have it in the show notes, Zoe. But yeah, I love connecting with people. I am as obviously an extrovert, and I love people. I think everybody could be a 10 somewhere, and I want everybody to find out where that is, even if they're not in that role today. I just feel like, man, life's too short. Don't just go do what you love. Do what you cannot not do. That would be, I think, the best thing. So I want to help people figure that out. And I want them to go way beyond where I've been as a leader.
Anthony, thank you so much. This has been so inspiring, and I would love to just keep talking. And I've really enjoyed it, and I feel like I've had a warm, fuzzy hug today in discussions with you. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome, Zoe.
Wouldn't you love to have a boss like Anthony? Oh, I just so enjoyed that conversation. I actually really felt heard and listened to when he did that little role play at the end of, how is Zoe? I'm like, I really want to talk about that. Thank you. And being the boss of my own business, nobody asked me those questions. And so it was really delightful to just imagine having a leader like Anthony. And probably the takeaway for me is, why can't we be that leader? Why can't we do that for others? And I think that's one of our roles as we listen to people like Anthony, is to take what they're doing and adopt that as our mode of being and doing in the world. And that's how we start to improve leadership, one bit at a time. And I think probably the other key takeaway for me is asking our team members, what is stupid work that we're doing? And let's stop that. So many great takeaways, so many great quotables in this interview. I'm probably going to save this and re-listen to it and extract it, if nothing else, to listen to his fabulous voice. If you did enjoy the show, please feel free to leave us a rating and a review on all the platforms that you're listening to. It really does help other people pick up and listen to the show and share these leadership insights with others. Share the episode. Share the episode with other people on your team who need to listen. It's a great opportunity to learn insights from performers around the world. And if you would like to write a comment and let me know what you thought about this show, please email me, zoe@zoerouth.com. It makes it feel way more like a conversation between me and you, the listener. So that would be awesome. And this episode, like many episodes, is brought to you by Amplifiers, which is our leading program for CEOs, managing directors. So those of us who are big thinkers with big hearts who want to make a big difference. It's your way and opportunity to grow and expand as a human and as a leader. And I want to know how you are. In the meantime, live well, lead well.
You've been listening to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. To find out more about leadership of the future or to contact Zoe, go to zoerouth.com.